When you think about the people involved in wildlife conservation, you might think about someone that's driving across an African national park in a 4x4 vehicle. If you're thinking closer to home, perhaps hiking through the forests and woodlands of Scotland. I'm pretty sure you don't think of 3D scanning, 3D printing and acrylic paints when you think of conservation. However, today we're going to go and see how some creative thinking combined with law enforcement knowledge is being used to protect endangered species. I've come to the makerspace at the Edinburgh Futures Institute to talk about an open access resource developed by the charity Traffic to help protect endangered sharks using 3D printing. But before we show you how 3D printers are being used, I want to talk a little bit about the threat that is facing sharks and what exactly the conservation charity Traffic is hoping to achieve. Now, sharks are hugely important for the health of our ecosystems, but unfortunately they're also under massive pressure from overfishing, and in many cases this is leading sharks towards extinction. One of the main markets that's driving this is a market for the fins of sharks. Shark fin soup in many parts of the world, like Southeast Asia, where I am now, is seen as a status symbol. It's something to give to wealthy business people to showcase how rich and powerful you are. What makes shark fin such an attractive market is that for fishers who are often risking their lives out at sea, they can catch a shark, sometimes on purpose, often accidentally with other fish, cut off the fins, and for the fishers, the fins are small, lightweight items that they can sell on the market. Now, aside from this being a horrific fate for the shark, according to the IUCN, each year somewhere between 26 and 73 million sharks are killed, driving whole populations to extinction. The practice of shark finning is still a legal practice in many countries. However, it is only legal on certain species. Most species are highly protected. This poses a massive challenge for those people that are trying to enforce the law. Law enforcement officials will patrol the markets looking for illegal activities and trying to charge people for the possession and sale of illegal shark fins. The problem is that these people are looking for all sorts of illegal products. It might be parts of tigers, it might be drugs or weapons. They have to be aware of all sorts of different illegal products. So it's very difficult to expect them to also be an expert in sharks. In an effort to help wildlife law enforcement officers identify what species of shark the fins they seize come from, Traffic came up with an ingenious idea. They identified 22 shark fins, all originating in the illegal trade, and identified them down to species. And this is where the ingenious bit comes in. Each of these fins was 3D scanned to produce a detailed digital replica. This digital replica could then be sent off to the 3D printer where a plastic printed version was produced. And in this case, we're using a 3D printer that costs about 200 UK pounds and about £1 worth of plastic for each fin. The printer slowly builds up the model of the fin in layers. And when it's done, the fin is just taken off the bed of the printer, the supports pulled away to leave a perfect replica of each fin. Now, much of the identification of which species is which comes from the shape of the fins. Size is much less of an important factor. You see, sharks keep on growing throughout their life, so a large fin could just be from an old shark and vice versa. What is important is the colour patterning on the fins. But as they come off the 3D printer, you can see that these two fins, which are from different species, look very, very similar. And this is where the next stage of the process comes in. So we're going to head off to the paint studio. Now, in this case, the paint studio is my home workshop, and I'm using a selection of acrylic inks and acrylic paints to carefully airbrush each individual 3D printed shark fin. And the important thing here is to make sure that all the markings are exactly as they would be on a real fin, because this is what the law enforcement officers are going to use to identify each of the fins. Now, once I finish painting them, I'm going to paint a little white square on each of them, and then I add a QR code carefully onto each of these fins. This QR code links to a website for each of the fins and each of the species to give you additional identifying features, so that again law enforcement can make sure that they think they've really made a good identification before it goes off for forensic testing. Now, just before I reveal the final set of shark fins, I do have a small favour to ask. If you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed finding out about 3D printing and shark fins, I would love it if you could like this video and subscribe. Share the video to anyone you think might be interested. It really does help me and help the channel out. But anyway, let's get back to showing you those shark fins. And here is the final set of 22 shark fins, representing all the species that traffic identified as being so important in the illegal trade in shark fins. These fins will now be taken to customs officials, where they will be used by customs officers to identify illegal shark fins in the trade by using these fake 3D printed and painted fins, and by comparing them to real shark fins, they will be able to make arrests and hopefully stop any of these protected species getting into the illegal trade. Now, for me, the thing that makes this project so special, apart from the fact that I got to play with 3D printers and painting up shark fins, is just the pure simplicity of the idea. These are cheap and easy to produce, and yet they can have a huge impact in protecting shark species. This is known as a presumptive test, so the customs official presumes that a shark that he has found is an illegal species, and then he compares it with one of these fins. And if he gets a match, he can then send it off to the customs lab for a test which will confirm whether or not it is the species he suspects. But I just think it's just a wonderful, clever way to really help wildlife conservation. For a confirmatory test,